I Killed Alfred Heavenrock by Jean Ray. I leaned my bicycle against a milestone and unfolded the map that had been given to me in the offices of Coulson, Mivins and Mivins. It was a map of Kent and part of Surrey. The girl who handed it to me had claimed that Kent was a more lucrative territory. She was lying, because I've never seen people less inclined than the people of Kent to buy Sheffield razors, shaving cream, aftershave lotion, in short, everything it takes to make a man's face smooth and clean. The map was complete enough to guide me to St Mary Cray after leaving London by way of Lewisham, but from Orpington on it had annoying mistakes and omissions. I was now vainly trying to find Chelsfield, which the girl had marked with a red pencil to make me believe it was a good place for sales. Fortunately, a gaunt, shaggy man came to my assistance. He popped out of a thicket, where he had probably just finished a little nap, for he was covered with twigs and red sand. "Have you got a light?" he asked, touching the remains of a hat. I told him I had. "I'm out of cigarettes too," he added. I gave him a cigarette and a match. "Are you looking for something around here?" he asked, between two puffs. "Yes, I'm looking for Chelsfield." "You're headed away from it, but don't be sorry. It's full of idiots. This is Ruggleton." "Ruggleton? That's not on my map." "It's no longer necessary. We can thank the German buzz bombs for that. You've just leaned your bicycle against the last vestige of my house." "This milestone?" "It's the cornerstone of the dining room fireplace. Now and then I come here to visit it and clear the dead leaves off of Maggie's grave." "Oh, your wife?" "No, my donkey. She was a wonderful animal. I can't imagine how her death could have helped the Germans to win the war." He prepared to leave. "If you've come here to sell something, go to Elms instead of Chelsfield. The people are a little less stupid there." "So this is all that's left of Ruggleton?" I said, stroking the stone. "Not quite. There's Miss Florence B's house, which was miraculously spared. You'll pass it on your way to Elms. It's almost opposite the cemetery. It's for rent, but what madman would want it?" He made a circular gesture with his hand. "Ruggleton and Maggie, I bid you farewell forever," he said dramatically. "Forever?" "I've got myself a job on a freighter that's going to the Caribbean. When I get there, I intend to jump ship and find some way of making a living." Leading my bicycle, I walked past the cemetery, which had been more conscientiously excavated by German bombs than the Valley of the Kings by Lord Carnarvon's expedition. I saw Miss Florence B leaning on her garden gate, watching me approach. She was a woman in her late 30s, with an attractive though somewhat stern face. She smiled when she saw me glance at the yellow sign that protruded from the holly hedge. "If you're from the rental agency," she began. I shook my head. "If you were a man, I'd try to sell you a pound of shaving soap," I said, smiling back at her. Opportunities to exchange a few words with a fellow human being were apparently rare for Miss B, because she made some commonplace remarks about the hard and uncertain times we were living in, for the obvious purpose of not having to return to silence and solitude too soon. When I first smiled at Florence B, I had no other intention than to sell razors and soap to the inhabitants of Kent. A moment later, I began elaborating a plan that was totally different from those that were supposed to supply me with my daily bread. And it was at that moment that Alfred Heavenrock was born. I took a long look around me and thoughtfully nodded my head. "It's odd," I said softly. Really odd. As I said this, my eyes went from the sign to the cemetery without stopping on Miss B. Odd? She asked. Yes, I was thinking of what Alfred said to me the other day. Alfred Heavenrock's my cousin, a man who's not like others, especially where his thoughts are concerned. Even though he's my cousin, I don't mind telling you he's a queer fellow. Heavenrock, she said meditatively. I've heard that name before. She was lying, of course, in the hope of prolonging our unexpected chat. I doubt that there was a Heavenrock in the Battle of Hastings, I said. Alfred is the only one in the family who has any money. During the war, I was content to serve in the army. She looked at me approvingly. Would you like to sit down, sir? My name is David Heavenrock. My friends used to call me Dave. I say used to because they all died on French soil fighting the Germans. We sat down on a bench in the garden. Why did you say it was odd when you looked at the sign in the cemetery? She asked abruptly. I gave a good imitation of a man whose innermost thoughts have just been discovered. Did you really notice what I was looking at? I asked naively. Well, I'll tell you. There was a silence. It was full of expectation for her, and of skillfully feigned discomposure for me. But my plan was taking shape. Well, I'll tell you, I began again in a tone of great embarrassment. The other day Alfred said to me, You know, David, he never calls me Dave, I've had enough of London and big cities and travelling. Try Bath or Margate, I advised him. He grunted and said, Close your travel brochures. You probably expect to get a commission, but with me it won't work. What I want is a house in a desert near a cemetery that no longer receives any corpses or visitors. That's what he said to me. Florence B. opened her eyes wide. Good heavens, she exclaimed. Can it be possible? Alfred is a strange man, I said. I won't say he's mad, because there's no one shrewder when it comes to lining his pockets, but he's a little eccentric. As eccentric as all that? Well, you see, his hobby is holding seances and reading books on spiritualism. He's a devoted follower of Dr. D, an Elizabethan wizard who claimed to raise the dead from their graves. How horrible, said Florence, her eyes shining with joy and the hope of hearing more. But I was careful not to give her a larger portion. I find that nonsense disgusting, I went on, but I have to listen to Alfred talk about it because now and then he helps me a little. Very little, I might add. However, maybe I'll do him a favour by telling him about your house, which just happens to be for rent. I stood up to take leave of her, even though my plan required a longer conversation. Would you like a glass of wine? She asked, after a slight hesitation. I made a polite gesture of refusal. I never drink wine or liquor. She gave me a look full of admiration. In that case, let me offer you a cup of tea. I accepted, after showing a certain hesitation of my own. She led me into a living room with a pleasant and even luxurious appearance. I saw 2 paintings by Whistler and an ostentatious set of silverware, but I showed no surprise. Her tea was excellent, and so were her cigarettes. Tell me about your cousin, she said, since he may become my tenant. Oh, I haven't promised you anything. Alfred is really strange, and although he's tremendously superstitious, you mustn't expect to get a lot of money out of him. Whenever money is involved, he becomes as cold and precise as an electronic computer. I have no such intention, she protested. I'll be glad to rent this house furnished for a reasonable amount so that I can leave this cursed place forever. I plan to retire to Doncaster, where I own an estate. How lucky you are to be able to say that, I murmured. Women have often told me that my mouth is attractive when it expresses bitterness by a rapid lowering of the corners. I think they are not wrong. I made a quick grimace of that kind, and Florence noticed it.
"Don't be sad, Mr. Dave,"
she stammered.
"An estate in Doncaster can't bring happiness."
A bullet in the heart would have at least made me less unhappy, I said, taking on a sombre expression. A bullet, like the one Percy Woodside got at Doctorville, or the one Bram Stone got a little further on. Neither Percy Woodside nor Bram Stone had ever existed, and it would only have been by the most freakish of accidents that a bullet could have hit me, because I had served my time in the army far from the front lines, as a hospital attendant.
"Don't be bitter, Dave."
She put her hand on mine.
"Everyone has troubles and worries. By the way, are you married?"
I shrugged my shoulders. No, thank God. I couldn't have given a wife anything but love. And it's well known that you can't live on that. This time I wasn't lying. I saw her smile. She was a pleasant sight. I looked with pleasure at her rather wide mouth, her dazzling teeth, and her dark eyes. At the same time, I admired the magnificent cameo she was wearing. I praised it at about £100.
"Tell me about your cousin,"
she said again, obviously regretting that she was obliged to give the conversation a different turn. "I can describe him to you. He thinks he's handsome, but he's deplorably ugly, with his little curled-up moustache, his thick red eyebrows, and his horrible dark glasses. He's getting paunchy. I can't stand fat men. His hands are always dirty, as though he'd just been going through old things in an attic. And he drinks."
"And as for you,"
said Florence, smiling,
"you're a sober man, which explains your repugnance, although you're not being very charitable."
"If he drank whiskey or even gin like everyone else, it wouldn't be so bad. But he never goes out without a flask of Kirschwasser, and it's abominable stuff. And if only he stopped there, but no, he feels insulted if you refuse to drink his Kirschwasser, because it's the only thing in the world he likes to share. He's made me suffer so much by forcing that loathsome liquor on me." Florence laughed.
"You're exaggerating. Personally, I have no objection to a little glass of cool, fragrant Kirschwasser."
I frowned and looked dissatisfied.
"Don't be cross,"
she said sweetly.
"We mustn't judge others too severely. We must forgive their little shortcomings. Haven't you any yourself?"
I looked straight into her eyes. "Yes, and I not only have small ones, but also big ones that are real faults, not just shortcomings. First of all, I want the dead to be respected, and not to be disturbed in their divine rest by outrageous practices of sorcery."
"But that's not a fault."
"It wouldn't be if I didn't behave like a drunken sailor whenever someone violates what I regard as a sacred law."
"Are you a little violent?"
"Yes, I am. I've punched Alfred in the nose more than once because of what I'm talking about. I'm one of those people who believe in defending their friends. My friends are dead, but I go on defending them just the same." I saw her lips quiver.
"Dave,"
she said slowly,
"you're a man."
I stood up and waited for her to hold out her hand to me.
"Perhaps we'll see each other again."
I lowered my eyes, and my lips made a quick, bitter grimace. "Perhaps, but no, Goodbye." I strode away without looking back and got onto my bicycle. As I pedalled away, I kept my eyes on her reflection in the rearview mirror. Standing by her garden gate with her hand pressed to her heart, Miss Florence B watched me ride off down the road. It took me a few days to work out my plan completely and get hold of £5 or £6. The bicycle belonged to Colson Mivins and Mivins, but I sold my Shakespeare, A beautiful addition, whose loss I shall always regret. I bet the 2 shillings I got for it on a horse named Halifax that was running at Norwood. The devil must have been on my side, because the horse won £10 for me. I had some difficulty in getting a bottle of good Kirschwasser, but almost none in getting a bottle of prussic acid, since I had worked in a hospital during the war, as I have already said. A hair dye that would give me a head of flaming red hair, and then vanish as soon as I wanted it to, was harder to find. But I managed to get it. A false moustache, a well-cut but gaudy suit, a pair of dark glasses. All that was only a question of hours. When I was in school, I played a few parts in drawing-room comedies, and everyone said I was meant to be an actor. Life delights in belying prophecies. I had done dozens of different kinds of work, but I had never been an actor. Nevertheless, the mirror showed me the image of a perfect Alfred Heavenrock. According to my plans, that newborn individual with moustache and glasses had only 24 hours to live.
Mr. Alfred Heavenrock, said Miss Florence B. Your cousin gave me such an accurate description of you that I recognized you at once.
Yeah, he must have said a lot of nasty things about me, I replied in an unpleasant, rasping voice.
Not at all.
Don't expect me to believe that. I know David. He's an envious man who hasn't been successful in life. He claims there's nothing better than abject honesty. What an imbecile, eh?
I don't think so,
said Florence, pursing her lips. Then you're wrong. And he's a brute, too. He doesn't hesitate to use his fists, even when he's not being attacked directly. That part of his character was useful to him during the war, it's true. I must admit he has courage, although I'm not one of those who admire that military virtue. What do you think of his looks? You like them, I suppose?
Yes, he's quite handsome, Florence replied, frankly.
You see, all women say the same thing. And yet, do you think he takes advantage of it, the way he could if he wanted to? Not at all. The poor fool is virtuous.
Would you like to see the house? Florence asked, icily.
That's why I'm here, I said, and I added heavily with a loud laugh. I'm also here to see if you're as pretty as he said.
What? Did he say?
Yes, he did. But don't expect anything from that paragon of virtue. Florence threw back her head. Her cheeks were aflame.
Let's drop that subject, Mr. Alfred Heavenrock, she said, stressing the first name. Please come with me.
The house was attractive, comfortably furnished, and very well kept. Are your servants expensive? I asked. I awaited her answer with anxiety.
I haven't had any for months now. This is a lonely place, but I like it anyway. However, the upkeep of this house is becoming too much for me to handle by myself.
I made a gesture of dissatisfaction.
You'll surely be able to find servants in Elms, she said quickly.
Or in London. Don't worry about that. Actually, the loneliness of this place is what suits me about it. I turned to the window and contemplated the cemetery. Now and then, as though lost in profound thoughts, I murmured, Yes, that's it. It might suit me. I looked at her and my voice became harsher than ever. Listen, sweetheart. I saw her control a movement of indignation. I'm a very frank man, but that doesn't mean I like to throw my money away. I like your house well enough to rent it, but don't ask an exorbitant price for it or I'll walk away. That'll be the end of it.
How about £100 a year and a 3-year lease?
Not on your life, I shouted. I'll pay you half that much. No more.
Then let's not discuss it any further, she said wearily. My price is reasonable.
Let's say £60, and I'll pay cash. I took a roll of banknotes from my pocket. They were play money notes that I had bought in a toy shop. We agreed on £60, and I did not hide my joy. Make out a receipt, my dear. You've just made a very good bargain, and I won't complain, even though I think the price is a little high. Let's drink to it, eh?
I have no wine to give you, she said curtly.
I have what I need, I said, taking my flask from my pocket and plucking 2 glasses from the sideboard. The die was cast. Florence was going to die. The liquor I was about to pour into her glass would kill her in a few seconds. I had already spotted the safe, her handbag full of money, and a few valuable pieces of jewellery. As soon as I had taken care of them, Alfred would disappear and become David again. But then I suddenly abandoned that plan and conceived another one, which did not lie in the shadow of the gallows. I cannot say how long this took. In fact, I believe it was so immediate and spontaneous that no question of time was involved. I put the glasses back down on the sideboard. Let me tell you something, sweetheart, I said. David isn't as stupid as I thought. She paused with her pen in her hand, for she was getting ready to write out the receipt, and gave me a questioning look. Yes, you are pretty. My God, I didn't notice it till now because my mind was on our business. Business has to come first, isn't that right, sweetheart? And that spineless David doesn't want to see you again. The pen fell from her hand and made an ink spot on the paper. Oh, it's because he's in love with you, I went on. He claims it was love at first sight. And here's the funniest part of it. He says he can never love any woman but you. He actually said that. The imbecile. I saw her pass her hand over her forehead and quiver from head to toe. The stupid fool, I cried in a still more piercing voice. If I'd been in his place, you know what I'd have done. She remained silent and motionless, but I saw a tear roll down her cheek. Here's what I'd have done. I went over to her and abruptly pressed my lips to her neck. Ah, what a tigress! She jumped up. Her chair fell over with a loud clatter, and I received the mightiest slap that ever dishonoured a man's cheek.
Get out! Never come back! She shrieked.
But what about the house?
I'd rather turn it into a home for stray cats than rent it to a foul beast like you. Get out! Alfred Heavenrock!
How harshly and contemptuously. She spat out the name Alfred. I slipped my flask of Kirschwasser into my pocket and walked out. When I was in the garden, I turned round and shouted the most ignoble insult that a man can throw in a woman's face. Alfred Heavenrock disappeared that same day, with his false moustache, his red hair, his dark glasses, and his flask of Kirschwasser. And David Heavenrock resumed his place in life. 2 days later, I rang Florence's doorbell. For a moment, I thought she was going to faint. I quickly closed the door behind me. I don't think anyone saw me, I said. I came here by a roundabout way.
Why?
She asked.
Is there any reason why you can't be seen coming here?
Yes, I answered dully. Only then did she notice my dishevelled appearance, my haggard face, my trembling hands. I wanted to see you one last time, Florence.
Good heavens! What's happened, Dave?
No. Let me ask you a question. Only one. But it will be horrible.
I already know you well enough to be sure that you couldn't ask me a really horrible question,
she said, taking my hands. This one will be.
Ask it.
I spoke very softly. Alfred told me that you... Good God, the words won't come out of my mouth. No, I can't ask you that.
I insist,
she said, and her lips were very close to mine. He said he made advances to you, that you gave in to him, that... Oh, no. I suddenly felt her lips on mine.
He lied. He's a disgusting swine. Do you believe me, Dave?
I drew back from her and clasped my head between my hands. I believe you now, but forgive me. I believed him and... I drew myself erect and said fiercely, I lost my head. I saw red. I picked up something from the table, something heavy, and I hit him with it. He fell. He didn't move.
He didn't move,
she said slowly. He was dead. There was an almost frighteningly long silence. Then she sobbed violently and collapsed against my chest.
My friend, you did that for me.
I gently pushed her away from me. I must leave. Don't regret anything, Florence, because I myself don't regret anything. May my destiny be fulfilled. Goodbye.
No!
She bolted the door. She asked me only one question about my crime.
Where's the body?
In the river, I answered. It's horrible, isn't it?
It's as it should be.
I had expected her to offer me the money I would need to go abroad and make a new life for myself. Things worked out quite differently. After spending a few days together in Ruggleton, we went to Doncaster and were married 3 weeks later. No marriage was ever happier. Florence was very rich and would not allow me to look for a job. After a year, our first child was born. A boy. When our son Lionel was 20 months old, Florence came back from a walk one day, trembling, greatly upset.
Dave, are you sure Alfred is dead?
She asked. I looked at her in stupefaction. Of course, darling. Why do you ask?
Because I've just seen him.
Impossible.
But it's true. I was walking along the wall of the cemetery when the gate opened and I saw him in front of me. He was unmistakable, with his red hair, his ugly little moustache, his dirty hands, and his dark glasses.
It must have been someone who looks like him, I said, weakly.
No, he sneered at me, and then, in that shrill, nasty voice of his, he called me that vile name again, the same one he called me when he left my house.
Everything seemed to whirl around me, and I suddenly knew the meaning of terror. A few days later, when Florence was sitting at the window, she screamed in alarm.
There he is!
The day was ending. The nightjar cried out in the gathering darkness. I pressed my forehead against the window pane. Outside I saw a figure blurred by the mist. Alfred Heavenrock. But mist and twilight often gave birth to illusions.
My dearest Dave, I can't go on. He has come back. He talks to me. He demands, threatens. I must give in, for your sake, my love, and for Lionel's. I'm going away with him. I don't think I shall ever see you again. May God have mercy on me. Your unhappy Florence.
It has been 3 years since I received that letter, and I have reread it every day. Florence has not come back. She will never come back. I feel it. I know it. One does not tempt the forces of hell with impunity. Lionel is grown. His hair is flaming red. His voice is harsh and shrill. Despite frequent washings, his hands are always dirty. He is malicious and has a fierce love of money. Nothing gives him more pleasure than shiny new coins. When he goes out for a walk, he always pulls his nursemaid toward the cemetery.
What's under those stones?
He asked once.
Why, dead people. I want to make them come out,
he bawled. In a neighbour's house the other day, liqueurs were being served. Lionel looked over the bottles and suddenly began shouting,
I want some! I want some!
He was eagerly pointing to a bottle of Kirschwasser. Ah, my handsome Shakespeare, how I miss you, and how your dark, profound words resound in my terrified memory. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Today's story was I Killed Alfred Heavenrock by Jean Ray. It was read by Jasper L'Estrange. I do hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, sweet dreams.